This is older than the pyramids, older than writing, older than the wheel. Long before humans built cities or kept any records, they were already doing one very specific thing. They were playing games. Humans have always played, but that raises a strange question. What was the very first game? Not a sport you run with your body, the first real game you could hold in your hand. The answer was hiding right under their feet. Literally, when early humans butchered an animal for food, they were left with the small bones of the ankle, four uneven sides, perfect for throwing. They were called knuckle bones, and this simple toy may be the oldest game piece in human history. People were tossing these bones tens of thousands of years ago all around the world. Here is how it worked. You throw the bones into the air and catch them, or drop them and read how they land. Each of the four sides was worth a different score. It was skill, luck, and counting all at once. Think about what that really was. A random result turned into points. A toy turned into rules. This was the seed of every dice game, every board game, every casino that would ever exist. And everyone played. Children in the dirt, soldiers in their camps, kings in their palaces. From Egypt to Greece to Rome to Mongolia, archaeologists keep digging up the exact same little bones. The bones were used for more than fun. Priests threw them to predict the future. The way they landed was read as a message from the gods. The line between a game and a sacred ritual was razor thin. But people wanted something fairer than a lumpy bone, something that landed the same way every time. So they carved, they shaped, and they invented one of the most important objects ever made, the die. The oldest dice we have found are around 5,000 years old, unearthed in what is now Iran. Suddenly, chance had a shape, and a shape you could trust was a shape you could build a whole game around. With reliable dice, the board game was born. Instead of just throwing, you now moved pieces. You had a path, a goal, and an opponent. For the first time, two people could sit down and compete on a map of rules. In Egypt, they played a game called Senet. It is over 5,000 years old. Pharaohs loved it so much that they were buried with their boards, ready to keep playing in the afterlife. To the Egyptians, Senet was not just a game. Winning meant your soul had safely crossed into the next world. A board on a table had become a map of life, death, and everything after. In Mesopotamia, they played something even more remarkable, the royal game of Ur. Its beautiful boards are around 4,600 years old, decorated with shells and bright blue stone. And here is the incredible part. We do not just have the board, we know exactly how to play it. A scholar at a museum decoded the rules from a clay tablet written in wedge-shaped script 2,000 years ago. Think about that for a second. You could sit down today and play a game exactly the way someone played it 4,500 years ago. The same moves, the same choices, across nearly 5,000 years. This was not happening in just one place. All over the world, different peoples were inventing games on their own. In Africa, they played Mancala, moving seeds and stones between rows of little pits. In China, they played Go, just black and white stones on a grid. The rules fit on a single page, yet the game is so deep that no human has ever truly mastered it. Simplicity hiding infinity. In India, they played Chaturanga, a game of war on a checkered board. It had an army, foot soldiers, horses, elephants, and chariots, each moving in its own special way across the battlefield. Then Chaturanga began to travel. It crossed Persia, spread through the Islamic world, and reached Europe. Along the way, the pieces changed. The elephant became a bishop. The chariot became a rook. Chaturanga had become chess. Look at the pattern. Egypt, China, India, Africa, the Americas. Peoples who had never met, separated by oceans, all independently invented complex games. That is not a coincidence. It is telling us something about the human mind. A good game is exercise for the brain. It trains us to plan ahead, to weigh risk, to be patient, to read another person. The very same skills that kept our ancestors alive. We were not just playing, we were practicing being human. Some games were not gentle at all. In ancient Mesoamerica, they played a ball game with a heavy rubber ball on a huge stone court more than 3,000 years ago. It was the first great team ball sport. But this game had a price. For the losing team, and sometimes even the winners, the reward was to be sacrificed to the gods. Imagine a sport where the final whistle could cost you your life. On the other side of the world, the Greeks turned games into a festival. In 776 BC, they held the first Olympics, running, wrestling, throwing, and chariot races, all to honor their gods. Winning at the Olympics made you a legend. Champions were crowned with olive leaves, celebrated like heroes, and remembered for centuries. Sport had become a way to reach for something close to immortality. Then came Rome, and the Romans were absolutely obsessed with games. They played everywhere, in the street, in the public baths, in the army camps. If a Roman had a spare moment, he was probably placing a bet. Rome loved gambling so much that they actually tried to ban dice games. It barely worked. People simply played in secret, in the back rooms of taverns, rolling their bones and betting their coins by candlelight. One of their favorite games was called tabula. You moved your pieces around a board according to your dice rolls, racing your opponent to the finish. If that sounds familiar, it should. It is the ancestor of backgammon. They also played La Trunculi, a game of little soldiers. It was pure strategy, a battle of surrounding and trapping your enemy's pieces. Roman generals were said to love it, sharpening their minds between real campaigns. But in Rome, the word game had a darker meaning too. In the great arena of the Colosseum, thousands cheered as gladiators fought. Entertainment and survival had been fused into one brutal spectacle. As the centuries passed, games kept climbing the social ladder. In medieval Europe, chess became the game of kings and knights. Knowing how to play was a sign that you were noble, clever, and well-bred. Then a quiet revolution arrived from China. Playing cards, cheap paper, a bit of ink, and suddenly you had a deck that could become 100 different games. Portable, endless fun you could fold into your pocket. Cards swept across Europe like wildfire. They filled taverns, palaces, and gambling halls. With a single cheap deck, a peasant and a lord could sit at the same table and, at least for one game, play as equals. Then everything sped up. The industrial age brought printed boards, mass-produced pieces, and something new: standard rules. For the first time, everyone everywhere could play the exact same game, exactly the same way. Modern sports were born from the same idea: written, agreed rules. Football's official rules were fixed in 1863. Volleyball was invented in 1895. Games we think of as ancient are barely a century old. And then came the screen. In 1972, a simple game of glowing paddles and a bouncing dot called Pong arrived. From a bone tossed in a cave, the game had finally become light on a piece of glass. Today, games are one of the biggest industries on Earth. Video games alone earn more money than movies and music combined. Hundreds of billions of dollars, built on the very same instinct that made someone throw a bone. Billions of people are playing at this very moment. On phones, on the bus, on consoles at home, on boards around a kitchen table. Play has quietly become one of the most universal human activities alive. Let's stop and notice something. After tens of thousands of years, after all the boards and balls and screens, we are still doing the exact same thing our ancestors did on that cave floor. A pixel on a screen or a bone in the dirt. To your brain, there is barely any difference. The same spark of focus, risk, and joy lights up now, exactly as it did around that first ancient fire. Playing games is not a break from being human. It may be one of the most human things we have ever done. We never really started playing, and it looks like we are never going to stop.